I'm Natalie, 36 years old, and the author of 5 best-selling novels that changed American literature according to the New York Times. My success story sounds inspiring until you learn how it began, with my parents funding college for all 3 of my siblings, then looking me in the eyes and saying they had nothing left for me. The pain of being the forgotten child fueled a determination they never saw coming. Before I share how I went from rejected daughter to award-winning author, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over family betrayal. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Pennsylvania, education was practically the family religion. My father Martin worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, bringing home a steady income, while my mother Donna taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. From the earliest days I can remember, their message was clear and consistent. College was non-negotiable. Education is the one thing nobody can take from you, Dad would announce during our Sunday dinners, surveying us kids with stern authority. It's the best investment we can make in your futures. We were 4 children total. My brother Andrew was the firstborn, older than me by 4 years. He carried the natural confidence of being the eldest son, though his academic performance was decidedly average. Then came my sister Jessica, 2 years my senior, whose personality shifted with the seasons. I followed third in line, and finally Laura, younger than me by just 18 months. Our home in Ridgewood Estates wasn't lavish, but it was comfortable. 4-bedroom colonial with a fenced backyard where neighborhood kids gathered for summer barbecues. We weren't wealthy, but we had security and stability. Dad managed the finances carefully, setting aside money for our college funds from the time we were born. At least, that's what I was told. Your education accounts are growing nicely, he would say during tax season, showing us the statements with pride. By the time each of you is ready for university, we'll have you covered. I believed him without question. Why wouldn't I? I watched the promise fulfilled for each of my siblings. Andrew was first. Despite his mediocre grades, he applied and was accepted to State University's business program. Not the most prestigious school, but solid and respectable. The day his acceptance letter arrived, Dad took us all out for steak dinner and toasted the future businessman of the family. When the tuition bills came, my parents paid them without complaint. For full years, including a semester Andrew had to repeat after failing 2 core classes. They even covered his apartment off campus after he complained about dorm living. The total investment probably reached nearly $80,000. It's worth every penny, Mom assured him at his graduation. Now you can start your career without debt hanging over your head. 2 years later, it was Jessica's turn. My sister had always been indecisive, changing hobbies and interests with alarming frequency. Not surprisingly, she changed her major 3 times, switching from psychology to communications to finally settling on hospitality management. Each change extended her time at university, but my parents never objected. Finding your path takes time, Mom said, signing the check for a 5th year of tuition. We want you to be sure about your direction. Jessica attended Riverdale University, more expensive than Andrew's school, but still in state. The extended timeline and higher tuition meant my parents spent well over $100,000 on her education. She graduated after 5.5 years with a degree that perfectly suited her people-person personality. Laura's turn came while Jessica was still finishing her final year. My younger sister had always been the family princess, confident and charismatic. She set her sights on Westfield College, a prestigious private university 3 states away, with a price tag to match. When the acceptance arrived, my parents threw an elaborate party. Only the best for our Laura, Dad announced, popping champagne. She's going to take the finance world by storm. I remember watching them write the first tuition check for $35,000 just for the first semester. Laura's education would ultimately cost over $200,000, including her luxury apartment and semester abroad in London. My parents stretched to make it happen, but they never once complained about the expense. Through all of this, I worked diligently on my own path. Unlike my siblings, academics came naturally to me. I maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout high school, earned perfect scores on standardized tests, and developed a passion for writing that consumed my free time. Mrs. Wilson, my English teacher junior year, recognized something in my writing that changed my life. "Natalie, this isn't just good writing for a high schooler," she told me after reading my short story assignment. "This is good writing, period. You have a gift that deserves nurturing." Under her mentorship, I entered writing competitions and won consistently. My stories were published in young writer anthologies, and I started to dream about a future crafting novels. When Mrs. Wilson suggested I apply to Westbrook University's renowned creative writing program, I felt a path opening before me. "They produce Pulitzer winners and literary legends," she explained, showing me their impressive alumni list. "With your talent and academic record, you have a real shot at admission." I spent months perfecting my application, polishing my writing samples until they shone with authenticity and technical precision. My personal essay explored how storytelling creates bridges between different human experiences. I researched every aspect of the program, envisioning myself in their writing workshops and literature seminars. When the thick acceptance package arrived in the mail, our kitchen erupted in celebration. Mom hugged me tight, Dad patted my shoulder with unusual warmth, and even my siblings offered congratulations. "Another Lambert heading to a top university," Dad said proudly. "You're carrying on the family tradition of excellence." I spent the next few weeks in a state of excited planning. I researched the campus housing options, connected with future classmates online, and created a reading list to prepare for my first semester courses. I spoke with current students who shared insights about the program's intensity and rewards. When Jessica called from her new apartment to ask about my college plans, I gushed about Westbrook's writing program and how it perfectly aligned with my goals. "Mom and Dad must be thrilled," she said. "They always talked about how smart you are." "They seem really proud," I agreed. "I can't wait to follow in your footsteps." Laura took me shopping for dorm essentials, helping me pick out bedding and decorations for my future room. "College will be the best years of your life," she assured me. "I'm glad Mom and Dad can give you this experience like they did for us." In those spring months before graduation, everything seemed perfectly aligned. I had earned my place at a prestigious university. My family had established a clear precedent of supporting their children's education. And most importantly, my parents had directly implied multiple times that they would handle my tuition just as they had for my siblings. I never imagined the conversation that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my place in our family. The evening that changed everything was unremarkable at first. Mom prepared her signature lasagna, and we gathered around the dining room table like countless times before. Andrew was visiting for the weekend. Jessica drove over after work, and Laura had just returned from her semester abroad, so it was a full family dinner. Dad poured wine for the adults and sparkling cider for me, still a few months shy of 21. The conversation flowed normally through the first course, everyone sharing updates about work and social lives. When dessert arrived, Dad cleared his throat in that authoritative way that signaled an important family discussion. "Natalie," he began, folding his hands on the table, "we need to talk about your college plans." "I've already arranged my orientation date," I replied eagerly. "And I'm connecting with my assigned roommate next week." My father and mother exchanged a look that sent a cold wave through my body. Something was wrong. "Honey," Mom said softly, "we need to explain our financial situation." Dad nodded gravely. "We've looked at all the numbers, and the truth is we simply cannot afford to pay for Westbrook. We don't have anything left for your education." The words hit like physical blows. I stared at them, waiting for additional explanation that would make sense of this unexpected announcement. "What do you mean?" I finally managed. "You paid for everyone else. All of them." I gestured toward my siblings. "That's actually part of the problem. Dad continued, his tone matter of fact. Supporting 3 college educations has drained our resources completely. Plus, that real estate investment downtown turned out poorly last year. We lost quite a bit, Mom added, looking down at her plate. The timing is just unfortunate. I felt my throat tightening as I struggled to process what I was hearing. But Westbrook costs about the same as what Laura's school cost. And you paid for her just fine. Our financial situation, there must be something you can do, I pleaded, looking from one parent to the other. Maybe a partial contribution? Or a loan from your retirement accounts that I could repay after graduation. Dad shook his head decisively. Absolutely not. Touching retirement funds would be irresponsible at our age. What about student loans? I suggested, desperation creeping into my voice. You could co-sign so I get better interest rates. Taking on debt for a creative writing degree would be a poor financial decision, Dad stated flatly. Writing is a wonderful hobby, Natalie, but it's not a practical career path. I turned to my mother, hoping for support. Mom, you always encouraged my writing. She reached over to pat my hand. As an extracurricular activity, yes. But your father is right about the practicality. Community college would be a sensible alternative, Dad suggested. You could get basic credits at a fraction of the cost, then maybe transfer somewhere more affordable for years 3 and 4. The casual way they dismantled my dreams left me breathless. I looked around at my siblings, searching for allies. Andrew studied his wine glass with sudden intense interest, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Jessica offered a small smile. Community college isn't that bad. Lots of people start there. Laura merely shrugged, as if my problem was entirely unrelated to her life. I can't believe this, I whispered, fighting. We never promise specific amounts, Dad corrected. And circumstances change. That's an important life lesson. I excused myself from the table and retreated to my bedroom, where the acceptance letter from Westbrook sat proudly displayed on my bulletin board. The tears came in waves as the full magnitude of the situation washed over me. While my siblings had been given every advantage, I was being left to fend for myself. The next morning, I overheard my parents in the kitchen discussing plans for a Mediterranean cruise that fall. The disconnect between claiming financial hardship and planning luxury travel was jarring. Later that week, Dad pulled into the driveway in a brand new Lincoln, replacing his 3-year-old model. These inconsistencies formed the first crack in my trust. If they truly couldn't afford to help with my education, how could they afford these luxuries? The question lingered uncomfortably in my mind. Still, I wasn't ready to give up on my dream. I spent the next 2 weeks researching every possible scholarship and financial aid option. I submitted applications for dozens of private scholarships, some requiring essays I stayed up all night perfecting. I contacted Westbrook's financial aid office to explain my situation. Their response came a week later, a partial merit scholarship based on my academic achievements, covering about 30% of the tuition. It was generous, but nowhere near enough to make attendance possible without substantial additional funding. With trembling hands, I drafted a detailed proposal for my parents. I would work part-time during the school year and full-time in summers. I would apply for every available scholarship. I would maintain perfect grades to keep my merit aid. I just needed them to cover the remaining portion, significantly less than what they had provided for my siblings. I presented my plan during a quiet moment after dinner, when Laura and Jessica weren't around to complicate the conversation. I've found ways to reduce the cost significantly, I explained, sliding the carefully prepared document across the table. And I'm willing to work harder than Andrew, Jessica, or Laura ever did to make this happen. Dad glanced at my proposal for approximately 30 seconds before pushing it back toward me. The answer is still no, Natalie. We simply don't have the funds available. But the cruise you're planning, Dad's new car, I said, unable to hide my frustration. Those things cost money too. Don't take that tone, Mom warned. And my education doesn't deserve similar priority? I asked, my voice breaking. We've made our decision, Dad stated with finality. This discussion is over. I gathered my papers with shaking hands, the reality of my situation finally sinking in. My dream school would remain just that, a dream. My family had decided I wasn't worth the investment they had readily made for my siblings. The true breaking point came 3 weeks later. I was searching for my birth certificate in Dad's home office to complete a scholarship application when I accidentally knocked over a folder on his desk. As I gathered the scattered papers, a bank statement caught my eye. It showed a savings account with over $150,000 earmarked as Laura's graduate school fund. My heart pounded as I digested this information. They had money set aside for Laura's future education, but claimed to have nothing for my undergraduate degree. With shaking hands, I continued looking through the folder and found investment accounts, property documents, and financial plans that painted a very different picture than the one my parents had presented to me. That evening, while my parents attended their weekly dinner with friends, I confronted Andrew when he stopped by to pick up some tools he'd left in the garage. I need you to be honest with me, I said, blocking his path to the door. Do Mom and Dad really not have money for my college, or is something else going on? Andrew's discomfort was immediate and obvious. He ran a hand through his hair and avoided my eyes. Look, Nat, family finances are complicated. They're paying for Laura's graduate program, I interrupted. I saw the account statement. They have the money. They're choosing not to spend it on me. My brother sighed heavily, finally meeting my gaze. It's not just about the money. Dad has always had different expectations for each of us. What does that mean? I pressed. He sees Laura and me as sound investments. Business and finance degrees lead to stable, profitable careers. Jessica's hospitality management connects her to Dad's business network. Andrew paused, struggling with his next words. You're writing. He doesn't see the return on investment. So this is about my major? I asked incredulously. They'd pay if I studied business? Andrew shook his head slowly. It's more than that. There's always been a pattern with how they treat you versus the rest of us. Surely you've noticed. As Andrew spoke, memories flooded back with new clarity. The time my straight A report card received a cursory nod, while Laura's B- in math earned a celebration dinner. The Christmas I received practical gifts while my siblings got expensive electronics. The family photos where I was positioned at the edge, almost an afterthought. Why? I whispered. Nothing, Andrew said, genuine sadness in his eyes. Sometimes parents just have favorites. It's not fair, but it's how they are. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every interaction with my parents replayed in my mind, now tinged with the awareness of their systematic favoritism. By morning, I had made a decision. I would confront them directly with what I knew. They returned from their Sunday brunch looking relaxed and content. I waited until they settled in the living room before approaching with the documents I'd discovered. I need to talk to you about something important, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. Dad glanced up from his newspaper with mild annoyance. What is it? I placed the bank statement on the coffee table between us. I found this, and several other financial documents. The change in the atmosphere was immediate. Dad's face flushed red, while Mom's hand flew to her throat. You were going through our private papers? Dad demanded, anger rising in his voice. I was looking for my birth certificate, I replied calmly. But that's not the point. You have money set aside for Laura's graduate school, but nothing for my undergraduate education. You lied to me. We didn't lie, Mom interjected weakly. We just made different decisions about resource allocation. Based on what? I challenged. Why does Laura deserve continued support while I get nothing? Dad stood up, towering over me. We don't have to justify our financial decisions to our children. We support the educational paths that make sense. My writing doesn't make sense? I asked, hurt bleeding into my tone despite my efforts to remain composed. It's a hobby, Natalie, not a career, Dad dismissed. Your sister is pursuing finance, a field with actual job prospects and earning potential. My writing won state competitions. I've been published in national anthologies. My professors say I have real talent. Talent doesn't pay mortgages, Dad scoffed. Investing in you wouldn't pay off like it did with your siblings. Laura has connections and drive. Andrew understands business. Jessica networks effectively. What exactly would we get from funding your creative experiments? The words struck like physical blows. In that moment, I understood completely. I wasn't seen as worthy of investment. Not my talent, not my work ethic, not even simply being their daughter warranted the same support my siblings received. So that's it? I asked, my voice barely audible. I'm just not worth it to you? Don't be dramatic, Mom sighed. We're being practical. One day you'll understand. Something broke inside me then, a final thread of hope that there was a reasonable explanation, that they truly couldn't afford to help me. Now I knew the truth. They could, but they wouldn't. Not because of money, but because they valued me less. I understand perfectly, I said, a strange calm settling over me. I understand that I've never been equal to your other children in your eyes. I understand that no achievement of mine will ever be good enough. And I understand that I need to leave this house immediately. Natalie, be reasonable, Mom started, but I was already heading upstairs. I packed my essentials into 2 suitcases, moving with mechanical efficiency. Clothes, laptop, manuscripts, and the few mementos that mattered to me. Through my bedroom window, I could see my parents in heated discussion on the patio below. Not about how to help me, I realized, but about how to manage the situation I had created by discovering their deception. My friend Melissa answered on the first ring when I called to ask if I could stay with her temporarily. Within an hour, I had loaded my belongings into my used Honda and was prepared to leave. My family gathered in the foyer as I dragged my suitcases downstairs. Laura watched with mild curiosity, Jessica seemed genuinely confused by the drama, and my parents wore identical expressions of annoyed inconvenience, as if I were creating problems over nothing. This is completely unnecessary, Dad stated. You're overreacting. You can stay here while attending community college, Mom offered, as if that resolved everything. I looked at each of them, memorizing their faces in this moment. Thank you for clarifying where I stand in this family. I won't forget the lesson. As I pulled out of the driveway, the finality of the moment hit me. I had not only lost my dream school, but my entire sense of family security. The betrayal cut deep, bringing questions about my fundamental worth. If my own parents didn't believe in me, perhaps I truly wasn't deserving of support or success. That night in Melissa's spare room, I experienced my first panic attack. The crushing weight on my chest, the gasping for breath, the absolute certainty that I was dying. Melissa held my hand through it, talking me back from the edge of terror. You're having an anxiety attack, she explained gently. It will pass. Just breathe with me. Later, when the physical symptoms subsided, I poured my heart into my journal, documenting the raw, unfiltered pain of abandonment. Little did I know, those pages would eventually form the emotional core of my first published novel. My new reality settled in quickly. If I wanted education, I would have to create my own path. I registered for classes at the local state university, a far cry from Westbrook's prestigious program, but still offering solid writing courses. The tuition was manageable with my savings and part-time jobs, but only barely. My schedule became a carefully orchestrated ballet of work and study. Mornings at the campus bookstore, afternoons in classes, evenings waitressing at Angelo's Italian restaurant, and late nights for homework and writing. Weekends meant tutoring high school students in English and picking up extra serving shifts. Sleep became a luxury I rarely enjoyed. 5 hours on a good night, often less. My weight dropped as meals became whatever I could grab between commitments. Dark circles became permanent fixtures under my eyes. My body constantly ached from exhaustion. The physical toll was significant, but the emotional burden weighed even heavier. Each time I checked my dwindling bank account before paying tuition installments, the rejection stung anew. When classmates complained about their parents' expectations, I sat silent, unable to relate to having family who cared enough to have expectations at all. Finding affordable housing was another challenge. Melissa's generosity had limits, and after 2 months, I needed my own space. I found a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, each of us squeezed into the smallest possible living arrangement to keep costs down. My bedroom fit only a twin bed and desk, with my clothes stored in containers underneath. Despite these hardships, unexpected supports emerged. Melissa remained steadfast, checking in regularly and sometimes bringing groceries when she knew I was struggling. I met Tyler in my creative writing seminar, and he became both a trusted friend and honest critic of my work. Rachel from the bookstore always covered my shifts when important assignments came due. This makeshift family sustained me through the darkest moments. When doubts crept in at 3 in the morning, Tyler's text messages reminded me why my writing mattered. When tears threatened during holiday seasons spent alone, Rachel invited me to her family celebrations. The true turning point came during my 2nd semester. Dr. Adams, my fiction writing professor, kept me after class one day. "Natalie, I'd like to discuss your last short story," he said, adjusting his glasses. My stomach dropped. The piece was deeply personal, a thinly veiled account of family betrayal. Perhaps I had revealed too much, made myself vulnerable to criticism. "Is there a problem with it?" I asked nervously. "Problem?" Dr. Adams looked surprised. "Quite the opposite. It's exceptional work. Raw, honest, technically sophisticated. I'd like your permission to submit it to the university literary magazine." "Really?" Disbelief colored my voice. "Really," he confirmed. "You have a distinctive voice, Natalie. The way you transform personal pain into universal truth is remarkable." That validation from a respected professional cracked open something inside me. Perhaps my parents were wrong. Perhaps my writing wasn't just a hobby, but a genuine talent worth nurturing. The story was published in the spring edition of Riverside Literary Review. Fellow students approached me on campus to discuss how my words had moved them. Professors from other departments mentioned reading and appreciating my work. Encouraged by this response, I submitted more pieces to various publications. The rejections came frequently, but occasional acceptances provided both validation and small financial compensations. Each publication strengthened my portfolio and resolve. Dr. Adams became more than a professor, evolving into a mentor who pushed me to dig deeper in my writing. He introduced me to author events, connected me with editors, and provided honest feedback when pieces fell short of my potential. "Your family narrative is compelling," he told me during one advising session, "but don't let it define your entire body of work. Expand your emotional range. Show me joy, wonder, and humor alongside the pain." This guidance proved invaluable as I developed my voice. I started experimenting with different styles and subjects, discovering strengths I hadn't recognized. My confidence grew with each successful creative risk. The summer after my sophomore year brought unexpected news. Dr. Adams had nominated me for the Riverside Excellence in Creative Writing Scholarship, a full tuition award granted to one student annually. The selection process involved portfolio review and interviews with the English department faculty. "They would be fools not to select you," Dr. Adams assured me. "But regardless of outcome, the nomination itself acknowledges your exceptional ability." The day the decision letter arrived, my hands trembled so violently I could barely open the envelope. The first line told me everything. "We are pleased to award you the Riverside Excellence in Creative Writing Scholarship for the coming academic year." Financial pressure lifted overnight. For the first time since leaving home, I could reduce my work hours and focus more energy on writing and academics. The validation felt almost as important as the money itself. Someone believed in me enough to invest in my future. My grades, already strong despite my punishing schedule, became exceptional. I made the dean's list consistently. My work appeared in increasingly prestigious publications. Faculty across departments knew my name and work. During this period, I began drafting what would eventually become my first novel. Late nights at my small desk, the glow of my laptop illuminating the walls of my tiny bedroom, I poured my experiences into fictional form. The protagonist wasn't me exactly, but carried echoes of my journey, transformed through imagination into something universal. Through all these achievements, my family remained absent. No congratulatory calls when my stories were published. No acknowledgement of my scholarship or academic honors. I sent occasional text messages to my siblings, receiving brief, superficial responses. My parents made no effort to contact me at all. The most painful absence came at graduation. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma with highest honors, I scanned the audience out of habit, knowing no familiar faces would appear. Instead, I found Melissa, Tyler, Rachel, and Dr. Adams standing and cheering louder than anyone else. They held up a banner reading, "We're so proud of you, Natalie." That night, during our celebration dinner, Dr. Adams mentioned a contact at Riverstone Publishing in New York. "They're looking for an editorial assistant," he explained. "Entry level, but a foot in the door at a respected publishing house. I've taken the liberty of recommending you." 2 weeks later, I packed my few belongings into my car and drove to New York City, leaving behind the state where my family still lived their lives without me. The physical distance felt symbolic, a fresh start in a city where nobody knew me as the unwanted daughter. New York City greeted me with its characteristic indifference to newcomers. My salary as an editorial assistant barely covered the tiny studio apartment I found in Queens, an hour's commute from the Riverstone Publishing offices in Manhattan. The space was small enough that I could touch opposing walls if I stretched out my arms, but it was mine alone, the first time I didn't need roommates to afford rent. The publishing industry proved both exciting and disillusioning. I loved being surrounded by books and literary conversations. I didn't love the coffee runs, photocopying, and administrative tasks that consumed most of my days. Still, I absorbed everything, studying the business from the inside while working on my own manuscript during early mornings and weekends. "You need to understand what sells if you want to be published," my supervisor Grace advised when she caught me analyzing the bestseller lists. "But you also need to write the book only you can write." I took this wisdom to heart, completing my novel after 14 months of disciplined writing. The story followed a young woman's journey to self-worth after family rejection, infused with elements of humor and hope that transformed it from mere autobiography into art. With trembling hands, I submitted the manuscript to 12 literary agents, carefully researched and selected for their representation of similar work. 11 rejection letters arrived over the next few months, each a small wound, but also valuable feedback. The 12th response was different. "I'd like to discuss representation. Your voice is fresh and compelling." Agent Sandra Harrington became my first professional champion. She helped refine the manuscript, tightening the narrative and enhancing certain emotional beats. When she deemed it ready, she submitted to publishing houses with strategic precision. The rejections came again, though Sandra insisted they were encouraging. "They're saying no to this book, not to you as a writer," she reminded me. "And several editors mentioned wanting to see your next project." After 8 publishing rejections, Crescent Moon Press, a small but respected literary publisher, made an offer. The advance was modest, just $5,000, but the validation was priceless. Someone was willing to invest actual money in my words. The publishing process moved slowly. Developmental edits, copy edits, cover design, marketing plans. A full year passed between contract signing and actual publication. I continued working at Riverstone, saying nothing to colleagues about my forthcoming book, afraid to seem presumptuous before proving myself. When finished copies of The Forgotten Daughter finally arrived at my apartment, I sat on my narrow bed holding the physical manifestation of my journey, My name on the cover. My words inside. Tangible proof that my voice mattered. The initial launch was small. A reading at an independent bookstore in Brooklyn attended by perhaps 20 people, mostly friends and publishing connections. Local reviews were kind but few. Sales numbers were modest. I tried to manage my expectations, reminding myself that most debut novels disappear without notice. Then came the turning point. Influential book blogger Madison Chin selected The Forgotten Daughter for her monthly spotlight. "This debut novel breaks your heart and rebuilds it stronger," she wrote. Lambert's prose is crystalline, her emotional insights razor-sharp. This isn't just another family drama, it's a profound meditation on self-worth and chosen family. The review went viral in literary circles. Sales numbers jumped overnight. Other reviewers sought copies. Bookstores that had initially declined my signing requests suddenly extended invitations. Literary critic Thomas Wilson for The Atlantic wrote, "Lambert emerges fully formed as a literary voice, bringing technical precision and emotional authenticity to this semi-autobiographical debut." The protagonist's journey from rejection to self-actualization unfolds with rare honesty and unexpected humor. 3 months after publication, my editor called with news that changed everything. The Forgotten Daughter would appear on the New York Times bestseller list. Not at number 1, but solidly on the list at number 14. For a literary debut from a small publisher, this was extraordinary. The first royalty check exceeded my annual salary at Riverstone. After consultation with Sandra, I made the terrifying decision to quit my day job and write full-time. My second novel, already in progress, now had my complete attention. This second book, less autobiographical but exploring similar themes of belonging and identity, attracted attention from major publishers. The resulting bidding war stunned me. Sandra called with the final offers, her voice vibrating with excitement. "Harper Literary is offering a 3-book deal with a 6-figure advance per book," she reported. "This is life-changing, Natalie." Indeed it was. The contract included marketing commitments, a multi-city tour, and foreign rights representation. Overnight, my financial struggles ended. I moved from my tiny Queens studio to a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn with actual natural light and space for a proper writing desk. The second novel, Invisible Lines, debuted at number 3 on the New York Times list and remained there for 11 weeks. Television appearances followed. Magazine profiles described me as the voice of a generation grappling with family dysfunction and self-determination. International rights sold in 27 countries. Film studios expressed interest in adaptation rights. My social media following expanded to hundreds of thousands. Fan mail arrived daily, readers sharing how my words had validated their own complex family experiences. Financial security arrived with stunning speed. After years of counting pennies for ramen noodles, I now had investment accounts and a financial advisor. I purchased my first home, a brownstone in Brooklyn that I renovated to include a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. The surreal nature of my success hit me one rainy Tuesday in Grand Central Station. Hurrying toward my track, I passed a woman completely absorbed in reading Invisible Lines. She was so engrossed that she nearly collided with a column. The sight of a stranger finding refuge in my words stopped me in my tracks. This was success beyond bestseller lists or bank accounts, creating stories that mattered to readers. With my third novel came literary award nominations. When The Distance Between Us won the National Book Critics Circle Award, I stood at the podium struggling to articulate my gratitude. Looking out at the audience of literary luminaries, I thought of the long journey from that dinner table where my dreams were dismissed. My acceptance speech acknowledged those who had supported me when family did not. To everyone who believes in someone who hasn't yet learned to believe in themselves, your faith creates possibility. Your support is oxygen to dormant flames. The speech went viral, resonating with people who had experienced similar rejection and those who provided crucial support to others. The resulting conversations about family dynamics and educational access inspired me to establish the Lambert Foundation for first-generation college students. The foundation will provide full scholarships to talented students whose families cannot or will not support their education, I announced at the launch event. No one's potential should be limited by others' failure to recognize it. As my platform grew, so did my ability to affect change. Each book tour included university events where I spoke candidly about my journey. Each interview became an opportunity to discuss educational access and family estrangement. The foundation funded not just scholarships, but also mentorship programs connecting students with professionals in their fields of interest. Through all this external success, I continued the internal work of healing. Weekly therapy sessions helped me process the complex emotions surrounding my family's rejection. Writing remained both profession and therapy, each book exploring different aspects of human connection and disconnection. The girl who once worried about affording ramen noodles now had financial security beyond her wildest dreams. The student who couldn't pay tuition now funded others' educations. The daughter deemed unworthy of investment had become a cultural voice worth listening to. What I didn't anticipate was how this public success would eventually circle back to the family who had turned away from me. The first contact came 5 years after I left home. My appearance on Good Morning America to discuss my second bestseller prompted a text message from my mother. "Saw you on TV this morning. You look well." The brevity and understatement were so characteristic that I almost laughed. After years of silence, this was her response to my national television appearance and literary success. I didn't reply. A week later, an email arrived from my father. "Congratulations on your books. Always knew you were a good writer." The revision of history was breathtaking. The man who had called my writing just a hobby now claimed to have always recognized my talent. Again, I chose not to respond. My siblings reached out in their own ways. Andrew's approach was the most genuine, a handwritten letter expressing regret for his passive role in my family's treatment. "I should have spoken up when they treated you differently," he wrote. "I recognized the pattern but did nothing to challenge it. That failure will always be one of my deepest regrets. Your success is entirely self-made and well-deserved." Jessica's outreach came via casual social media message, as if we'd simply lost touch rather than experienced family rupture. "Hey sis. Long time no talk. Love seeing your books everywhere. We should catch up sometime." Laura's contact was the most transparent in its motivation. After congratulatory pleasantries, her email shifted quickly to its true purpose. "I'm considering starting my own business and could use some advice on financing. Maybe we could discuss over dinner next time you're in town." I responded selectively, acknowledging only Andrew's letter with a brief but civil note thanking him for his honesty. The others I let fade into digital silence. As my public profile continued to rise, my parents' attempts at reconnection grew more persistent. Birthday cards arrived, then Christmas gifts. Invitations to family gatherings that had proceeded without me for years. Each attempt carefully crafted to seem reasonable and loving to outside observers. "Your mother and I are very proud of what you've accomplished," Dad wrote in one email. "We always knew you had special talents." The gaslighting was subtle but unmistakable. The narrative revision continued, attempting to erase their rejection and claim partial credit for my success. Their version positioned my departure as a mutually agreed separation rather than forced exile, my success as something they had always anticipated rather than actively discouraged. I maintained my silence until my third book release coincided with a literary festival in my hometown. The proximity made avoidance impossible. When my mother called suggesting a family dinner during my visit, I finally agreed, setting clear boundaries with my therapist's guidance. "I'll meet for one dinner at a public restaurant," I specified, just to clear the air. The evening was as awkward as expected. We gathered at an upscale steakhouse, my parents dressed formally as if for a special occasion. Mom had her hair freshly styled. Dad wore his expensive watch. Laura arrived late, making a calculated entrance. Jessica brought her new husband, perhaps as conversational buffer. Andrew came alone and sat beside me in silent support. "You look wonderful, Natalie," Mom opened after we ordered drinks. "Success agrees with you." "Thank you," I replied simply. "We've read all your books," Dad added. "Very impressive work." The conversation proceeded with painful politeness, skimming across surface topics while avoiding the elephant in the room. Finally, during the main course, Mom broached the subject directly. "We've missed having you in our lives," she said. "Families should be together, especially in times of success and celebration." "I'm curious about that timing," I responded, keeping my voice level. The interest in reconnection seems to correlate directly with my public achievements. An uncomfortable silence fell across the table. Dad cleared his throat. "We always believed in you, Natalie. Perhaps we didn't express it effectively, but we knew you had it in you." The revision of history continued, his confidence unwavering. "Actually, you explicitly told me my writing was just a hobby and not worth investing in," I corrected. "You said, and I quote, 'investing in you wouldn't pay off like it did with your siblings.'" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "That's not exactly what I meant." "It's precisely what you meant," I interrupted. "And you were wrong. Not just morally, but practically. My hobby has outsold Laura's finance career, Jessica's hospitality management, and Andrew's business degree combined." Mother interjected smoothly, "Perhaps we made mistakes, but struggling built your character. Look how well everything turned out." This attempt to reframe their rejection as a beneficial hardship ignited something in me. "Let's be clear," I said calmly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice, repeatedly, to value me less than my siblings. My success occurred despite your actions, not because of them." The remainder of dinner passed in strained conversation. As we prepared to leave, Dad mentioned my upcoming literary award ceremony. "We'd love to attend as your parents," he said, "to show our support." The request crystallized everything problematic about their approach. They wanted access to my success without accountability for their actions, the public role of proud parents without the private work of genuine reconciliation. The following day, I sent a carefully worded email establishing clear boundaries. I would maintain limited contact with conditions, no public appearances together, no claims of supporting my career, no financial requests, and most importantly, no narrative revision about our past. Their response was predictably indignant. Dad called it unnecessarily harsh, while Mom suggested I was holding onto bitterness unhealthily. They couldn't comprehend that boundaries weren't punishment, but protection. The situation came to a head when a major profile in the New Yorker mentioned my estrangement from my parents. The interviewer had asked about my foundation for unsupported students, leading naturally to my personal experience. While I spoke factually without unnecessary detail, the article included the basic truth. My parents had funded my siblings' education, but refused to support mine. The day after publication, my father called in a rage. "How dare you air family business publicly? We're being harassed by neighbors who read that hit piece." I answered a direct question honestly, I replied. "I didn't seek to discuss it. You've made us look terrible. After everything we did for you." "What exactly did you do for me, Dad?" I asked quietly. The silence on the line spoke volumes. The final confrontation occurred at Andrew's 40th birthday celebration. I attended at his specific request, knowing my parents would be present. They maintained cold politeness until champagne loosened inhibitions. "It's time to put this nonsense behind us," Dad declared, cornering me by the dessert table. "Family is family. You can't keep punishing us forever." "I'm not punishing you," I clarified. "I'm protecting myself from people who have demonstrated they don't value me equally." "That's ridiculous," he scoffed. "We're your parents. We love all our children the same. Your actions showed otherwise." "Actions? You mean not paying for an impractical degree?" "That was financial wisdom, not rejection." "Then why did Laura have a graduate school fund while I had nothing for undergraduate studies?" I asked. Why did you tell me you had no money while planning cruises and buying new cars? My mother joined us, sensing conflict. Natalie, you're successful now. Can't we move forward without dwelling on the past? Moving forward requires acknowledging the past accurately, I replied. Not rewriting it to make yourselves comfortable. Dad's expression hardened. Fine. We made a judgment call that your writing wasn't worth investing in. Obviously, we were wrong. Is that what you want to hear? I want authenticity, not strategic admissions, I said. And I want respect for the boundaries I've established. Boundaries, Mom sighed. Such a therapy word. In my day, family just worked things out. In your day, parents probably didn't tell one child they weren't worth investing in while spending hundreds of thousands on her siblings, I countered. The conversation ended in stalemate, but something had shifted. My parents finally seemed to understand that reconciliation on their terms wasn't possible. Their attempts at contact became less frequent, less demanding, and occasionally almost respectful of my stated boundaries. Andrew remained the only family member with whom I maintained regular contact. Our relationship evolved into something genuine and supportive. He never made excuses for our parents, but offered perspective that helped me process the family dynamics. They're products of their own upbringing and limitations, he explained during one of our monthly dinners. Not to excuse their behavior, but to understand it. This understanding helped me release some bitterness without compromising my boundaries. I could acknowledge their humanity without needing their approval or presence in my daily life. When media inevitably asked about my family during interviews, I developed a response that was truthful without being vindictive. My journey included overcoming significant obstacles, including lack of family support for my education and career path. That experience shaped both my resilience and my commitment to supporting others facing similar challenges. This framing kept the focus on positive outcomes rather than personal grievances, while still honoring my authentic experience. It also allowed me to maintain privacy around the specific details of ongoing family dynamics. For their part, my parents eventually stopped attempting to claim credit for my success or demand access to it. Our interactions became infrequent, but less contentious, governed by the boundaries I had established and they had reluctantly accepted. The journey toward healing began in earnest once I established firm boundaries with my family. Weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Simmons provided a safe space to untangle the complex emotions surrounding parental rejection. The hardest part of healing from family wounds, Dr. Simmons explained during one particularly difficult session, is separating your inherent worth from their inability to recognize it. This concept became central to my recovery. My parents' failure to value me equally wasn't evidence of my lesser worth, but of their own limitations. This shift in perspective didn't erase the pain, but contextualizing it made it more manageable. Therapy uncovered how deeply the rejection had affected my self-perception. Despite external success, imposter syndrome lingered. Each achievement came with the whispered question, am I truly deserving of this? Dr. Simmons helped me recognize these thoughts as echoes of familial messaging rather than objective truth. Your success isn't accidental or undeserved, she reminded me. It's the natural result of talent nurtured through extraordinary effort. Gradually, I developed healthier thought patterns. The critical inner voice that questioned my worth grew quieter. The need for external validation diminished. I began to trust my own assessment of my work and worth. Equally important was the chosen family I built around me. Melissa remained my closest friend, now living just a few blocks from my Brooklyn home. Tyler had become my literary confidant, the first reader of each new manuscript. Rachel, now a successful bookstore owner, hosted my local readings with special care. Dr. Adams, my former professor, family is defined by consistent care, not genetic connection, he told me over coffee after my 4th book launch. You've built something beautiful with the people who choose to show up for you. This chosen family gathered for holidays, celebrated milestones, and supported each other through difficulties. They demonstrated what family should be: reliable, supportive, and genuinely invested in each other's well-being. My foundation work became another powerful healing mechanism. The Lambert Foundation for first-generation college students grew beyond my initial vision, now supporting hundreds of students annually with full scholarships and mentorship programs. Each recipient had a story of financial hardship or family limitation, though few experienced the direct rejection I had faced. At our annual scholarship reception, I connected with these bright, determined young people who refused to let circumstance limit their potential. Their resilience reflected my own journey back to me, showing how adversity could strengthen rather than destroy. Maria, one of our first scholarship recipients, now practiced environmental law. At last year's event, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "You showed me that our origins don't determine our destinations." The foundation partnered with universities nationwide to identify promising students without financial support. We provided not just tuition, but comprehensive assistance including housing stipends, book allowances, and emergency funds. Most importantly, we connected students with mentors in their fields of interest, ensuring they had professional guidance alongside financial support. Writing remained my primary therapy and purpose. Each novel allowed me to process different aspects of human connection and disconnection. My fifth book, Redefined Relations, explored family estrangement and reconciliation with nuance that critics called breathtakingly honest without being vindictive. Speaking openly about family estrangement in interviews and essays helped others facing similar situations. The emails arrived daily. Your story gave me permission to establish boundaries with toxic family members. Reading about your experience helped me stop blaming myself for my parents' limitations. You put into words what I've felt but couldn't express. My relationship with Andrew evolved into something I never expected, a healthy sibling bond. He made amends not through words alone, but consistent actions, showing up reliably and respecting my boundaries without question. He became the bridge between me and the rest of the family, translating perspectives without pressure. During one of our monthly dinners, Andrew reflected on our family dynamics with rare insight. "I've been thinking about why they treated you differently," he said. "It wasn't really about your writing or career choice." "What was it about?" I asked. "You challenged their worldview just by being yourself. Your independence, your questioning mind, your unwillingness to accept the family script without examination. They didn't know how to handle someone they couldn't easily define and control." This perspective offered unexpected peace. Their rejection wasn't about my inherent worth, but their own limitations. Understanding this didn't excuse their behavior, but helped me contextualize it within their own flawed humanity. With Andrew's careful facilitation, I eventually agreed to occasional, limited family gatherings. Thanksgiving dinner every other year. A brief appearance at significant family events. These interactions remained governed by clear boundaries, no public claiming of credit for my success, no financial requests, no narrative revision. During these rare gatherings, I maintained polite distance while observing the family dynamics with a writer's analytical eye. My parents had aged visibly, their marriage showing stress lines I hadn't noticed before. Jessica seemed perpetually dissatisfied despite external success. Laura's aggressive ambition masked deep insecurity. Only Andrew seemed truly at peace with his life choices and relationships. My mother occasionally attempted to bridge our emotional distance, though her efforts remained superficial. "I've read your new book 3 times, she mentioned during last year's Thanksgiving. The mother character seems so complex." "All my characters are complex," I replied neutrally. "Like real people." She nodded, perhaps understanding the implicit message. My father maintained greater emotional distance, our interactions limited to safe topics like weather and current events. During Andrew's wedding anniversary celebration, however, he surprised me with an almost vulnerable moment. "Your foundation work is admirable," he said, avoiding direct eye contact. "Those students are fortunate to have your support." "Everyone deserves support for their education," I replied, the subtext clear to us both. He nodded once, the closest thing to acknowledgement I'd likely ever receive. These limited interactions reinforced my most profound lesson: forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I could release the anger and bitterness that once consumed me without pretending the injury never occurred. I could wish them well without needing their presence in my daily life. I could acknowledge their humanity without excusing their choices. This understanding brought a peace I never anticipated. The deep wound of rejection gradually transformed into a source of strength and empathy. The question evolved from, why wasn't I good enough for them, to how can I use this experience to help others feel worthy despite rejection? My life now centers on creation rather than reaction. New novels emerge from imagination rather than wound processing. Foundation work focuses on building opportunities rather than addressing past injustices. Personal relationships thrive on mutual respect and genuine connection rather than obligation or validation seeking. The family I've created through choice rather than blood provides the unconditional support I once craved from my parents. Success has brought material comfort and professional fulfillment beyond my youthful dreams. Most importantly, internal peace has replaced the desperate need for external validation that once drove me. If my story offers any wisdom, it's this: your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. Family should be defined by consistent care, not genetic connection. Success can grow from rejection if you refuse to accept others' limited vision of your potential. And finally, healing happens not when pain disappears completely, but when it transforms into something meaningful and useful to others. I'm still writing my story, literally and figuratively, creating a life based on my own definition of success. What about you? Has a family rejection ever pushed you toward unexpected growth? Have you had to redefine success on your own terms? Share your experience in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more journeys of overcoming family betrayal and finding personal triumph. Remember that your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it, and the family that matters most is often the one you build yourself. Thank you for listening to my story today.